everybody, come on in. Please find your seats. Thank you for joining the Mad Hatters program. This is Ziggy. Today, we are going to talk about Women's History Day, which was last Saturday. We're also going to talk a little bit about my healing journey and where I'm at right now. This has been a lovely, lovely week and a half in the medicine, and I want to get into some details about that. So let's start with practicing gratitude. I got my coffee too. I'm back. I'm back in the caffeine again, just like I said. All right. First up, I'm grateful for the forest. For those of you who don't know, I live up north, way up north. All right. I live in a cabin in the woods. It is delightful. It's quiet. It's away from civilization. It's a really good place for me to be right now. This is the part of my healing journey where I found the environment where I can bring out into the light the things that need to be healed. And that's what I'm on. The second thing that I am grateful for this week is the podcast that I've been listening to. I want to get into some podcasts today. Uh, I have received messages that I have needed to hear thanks to the algorithm, thanks to the universal algorithm, which can operate and override any internet algorithm on Elon Musk's internet at any time. So grateful for that. The third thing I'm grateful for today is friends. You guys, I got a chance to visit some friends this weekend, and you would not believe the time I had. This thing happened that has blown my mind. It's still blowing my mind. All right. So I had this friend, I lost touch with him for a few years. We connected back up again. It was his birthday this year, earlier this year. Um, so I went down to visit him on Sunday. And I'm talking to his mom, and I'm just chatting with her, and we're talking about psychedelics because that's what I want to talk about. And I ask her, well, what do you think about magic mushrooms? And she goes, oh, this little old lady, little, oh yeah, my best friend, her husband was a mushroom guru. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. So you probably know a little bit about this. And she's like, oh yeah, and his name was Terrence McKenna. What? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, right now. I lost my shit. My friend's mom's best friend was Terrence McKenna's wife. That is the coolest thing I have ever heard. And then she goes on to tell me the story about how he accidentally gave her phone number out to some of his clients or whatever. She's got these people calling her house phone asking for Terrence motherfucking Kenna. Can you believe that? I'm telling you, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Knowing that I'm like 2 degrees of separation away from the late great Mr. McKenna. That was just so cool. Thank you, universe. I appreciate that. That was like a little ray of sunshine that just came down in that moment. So I was happy about that. So many more things to be grateful for, but let's move on. How about? All right. So last week, I talked a little bit about how my healing journey started. And now I'm going to talk about where I'm at this week and this month. Actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, okay? I'm going to revisit that. I'm going to revisit that time in my life when the medicine called to me. So I had what many people have is called the glow down. And when you have like a life-changing experience like that, you come down and it's like, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, everybody should have this. Um, and since then, it is my opinion that while everybody should have access to this medicine safely, it really isn't for everybody. Um, I'll elaborate on that a little more, but I do have mixed feelings. I'm going to talk about my mixed feelings now. I'm a mixed man. I got mixed feelings. Um, for one thing, in short, I think what these medicines do, um, generally, is they amplify and they shine a light on what you've got going on. I'm not convinced uh, that the default experience is to have your life changed. I think that your life will change if you are ready for it to change, and then the medicine can help you along the way with that. But I think for the most part, these experiences are going to amplify what we already believe and what we're already expecting to have happen. So, um, it's not going to be a cure or a magic bullet. You know, a lot of people think that psychedelic medicine will fix society, and I don't think that's necessarily true. Um, one of the things I've always had mixed feelings about is dosages and frequency of use, because I hear a lot of people say that a person should only have this type of experience once or twice in their life. Me, I am not one of those people. I am doing it and I am doing it. Well, I'm not taking trips as frequently as I would like to, but again, I think it depends on the person and I think it depends on what their journey is. Many people will only do a high dose or so something like that once or twice and then that's good for them. And then some people will have phases where they'll take the medicine and then they'll be done with it. I fully intend to be be using these medicines for, you know, indefinitely. As long as I have safe access to them, I'm gonna use them. That's me. But I also have mixed feelings about cultural appropriation and access to psychedelic medicine within the framework of capitalism. So, right now, we are in the third wave of psychedelics. The first wave being generally the indigenous people's use around the world. Okay. The second wave being the countercultural movement of the 60s and 70s, you know, the hippies. And the third wave is where we're at now, where scientists and doctors are just trying to take this seriously and really study it to hopefully to lend credibility to the safe and effective use of them. Unfortunately, you can't really separate the modern world from colonization. And if you don't know about magic mushrooms in particular, um, Maria Sabina, who is a mystic in Mexico, she is largely credited for um, the discovery or mm, the transition from mushrooms from the indigenous people to America. Now, this one dude, I forget his name. I think his last name is Wasson or something. He was the guy that went over to Mexico, became friends with her, learned how to use these medicines. Then he brought it back and popularized it. But the short version of this story is um, when things blew up in America, people all around the world were flocking to her to try to get what they could. And it really kind of upset the balance of the village that she lived in and the indigenous people. Basically, Western society did her dirty, and she spent her last years um, kind of being scorned by her people because as usual, people who have go into these places and take and don't reciprocate, they don't give back. So the question on my mind is how do I use these responsibly and always keep in mind that the indigenous people of the world who have protected these medicines and have kept them sacred um, are still under the oppression of colonization. I'm in California. California is stolen land. Um, Now I don't know which of the indigenous people had any sort of mystical practices, um, but the point is, I have mixed feelings about benefiting so much from everything I have while people are suffering. So it's hard to kind of temper that. It's a very nuanced conversation. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to psychedelics, the cat's out of the bag. Like, this is happening, and I just have to remain grateful that I have the opportunity to do what I can do. Um, I develop my personal practice. I don't do rituals that are established by other cultures. Um, I develop my own practice and do what I can to, well, I'll say that as of now, I'm able to source these medicines from a black owned business. And I am really happy that I'm able to do that. I'm supporting my folks. Um, they have welcomed me into their space, and it's been an incredible experience so far. So I'm going to keep doing that. And other than that, uh, try to bring myself into awareness of what is going on in the world. And that's kind of what I'm here to do. I also, like I said, have mixed feelings about its place in capitalism. My belief is that capitalism is not good. You cannot have capitalism without colonization. You cannot have capitalism without racism, without misogyny, and without oppression. It is a part of the system. So, my hope is that uh, through the medicine, in whatever way possible, that the universe can bring together a critical mass of people that will be ready to form a new world, a new society where we really are, treating each other as equals, and so that people don't have to be suffering under colonization. That's my dream, and I believe that we're getting pretty close to that. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the dosage. Now, when I first started my practice, I had an information packet that l- labeled had like a chart of different dosages. Now, to start with, you've got microdosing, and that is a sub perceptual dose. So that means that you take it, you're not going to feel anything. It's working in the background. And this is something that I've experimented with. Uh, I believe it's beneficial. I don't understand the science behind it. I think they're still developing the science behind it. Um, but that is sort of where many people start. Now they say about zero point 0.5 grams is the threshold. That's generally defined as the threshold. So if you take zero point 0.5 or above, that's when you're going to start to feel something. For me, zero point 0.5 isn't really enough to have an experience. I might feel it in my body, but I'm not really messing with that dose. 1 gram to 1.5 is considered a low dose. And that is where most people start. I also want to preference and say that I am, of course, not advocating for the use of psychedelic medicine or the use of any drug. You've got to decide for yourself what you are going to do. These are for informational purposes only. Okay. But if one is going to use mushrooms for the first time, zero point 0.5 to 1.5 grams is the starting range. Okay. Now, once you start getting to 2 to 3 grams, now we're in a mid range dose. Um, that is what most people are going to take if you've got all day. I expect a trip to last at least 4 hours, um, 4 to 6 hours. However, the past couple trips that I've been on lasted for 8 hours. It was a little longer than I expected, but 1.5 all the way to 3 ish is a mid range dose. Now, 3 3.5, 3.5 is an eighth. That's the standard high dose. Okay? If you're taking that dose, you are going to go on a journey. That's where most of the breakthroughs happen. That's where most of the traveling happens. Most of the beautiful experiences that people have, taken about an eighth. And then when you get to 4 grams, now you're taking a high dose. Now you're taking a very high dose. Now, I'm reading this chart and it says all of this. And then it says 5 plus grams. And it says this is considered a cosmic dose. This is not for everybody. You should only take this dose if you feel called to do so. And as soon as I read that, I knew that I was called to do so. There was never any doubt in my mind, and I've always told my friends this: if you're ever wondering if you should take a cosmic dose, the answer is no. Uh, no. If you got to ask, skip it. You know. But the most transformative experiences, at least for me, happen on high doses. Um, the highest dose I've ever heard of anyone taking was 2 ounces. So that's about 56 grams, maybe 60 grams for good measure. I heard that somebody had taken a dose. Legendary. I honestly, someday I would like to take that ride someday. I think I really would. But, I buy my mushrooms. I don't grow them myself, and they're not exactly cheap. So, so I'm not gonna do that right now. I know that Paul Stamets, who's also a legendary, still alive man with us today, has done a 30-gram dose. And I will probably do that within the next year or so when I'm ready, when it's convenient. Um, would love to. Uh, but yes, you have the most transformative experiences on the higher doses. You also have the most challenging experiences on the high doses. Um, I will say briefly, people don't want to use the word bad trip. Somebody has a bad trip. Oh, you didn't have a bad trip. You had a challenging trip. There are bad trips. There are. We might overuse that word, but there are bad trips. If your set and setting is not okay, if you're with people that either you can't trust or they don't really care about you, um, you very may well have a bad trip. The challenging trips are trips where, well, basically my ego is being challenged in certain ways. I think it's not bad because I'm open and ready to receive those things. However, some of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced were on those trips in those spaces. Things that if you haven't done psychedelics before, quite frankly, you wouldn't believe. So that's my spiel on dosage. Where I'm at now. So right now, this month, I'm trying to find my minimum effective dose. That is the lowest dose that I can take to get the results that I'm looking for. Um, this last time around, I was hoping that 5 grams would do it, about 5.5 grams would do it. That's not quite high enough for me to get to where I'm going. And I'll explain a little bit more on that. Um, Now, when I'm going to do a deep dive, and that's what I'm talking about now, high dose, high cosmic dose, I'm going deep within myself to explore my inner world, to really to coax out those challenging trips, to be honest. Um, I prepare ahead of time. I ramp up my meditation practice. I'm pretty good about meditating every day. Every once in a while, I'll miss a day, but in the week leading up to it, I want to make sure that I'm on point. Okay. I'm also preparing my body. So, no caffeine, no sugar, no processed food. I try not to eat processed food anyway, but uh, I also will avoid eating meat. So that's why last week I didn't have any coffee. I just want to not be on caffeine. It really does make a difference, I'm noticing. And then the day before I go on my journey, I'm going to fast. This gets me into the spiritual mindset that I want to be in. It also is very beneficial if you're going to do a high dose to go on an empty stomach because let me tell you, you need to be near a bathroom during trips like these. It can be a rocky ride. I'll just leave it at that. Most of my preferred trips, if I'm going inward, that means that I'm putting a blindfold on and then I'm putting headphones on. I'm putting a playlist on of mostly instrumental music just because that's what I prefer. Sometimes the lyrics can get in the way, but headphones on, blindfold on, and then I'm going inward. Okay, so this year, for the past year almost, I'm working on a project, and it's called The Ghost in the Machine. It's a phrase that my therapist coined when I was explaining to her that I feel something like a shadow or a specter or a layer of like fog or like heaviness that I felt for most of my life, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Um, we've outlined three areas that we are looking at. One has to do with race and growing up, as a mixed man in this society that creates some background static, that's some stress that I'm basically always carrying, even if I'm not aware of it. Um, the other we're talking about is ADHD. Um, and then the other thing we're talking about is childhood trauma, which don't feel like getting into today. Um, the three of these things, when put together over a long period of time, have resulted in what I'm noticing as resentment. And by acknowledging my resentment and working through it, we're hoping to trace it back to the source. But for now, I don't know what exactly I'm looking for. But what I do know is this: many, many times I have gone on a journey and I have been shown the same visions of a certain place that I've named the machine shop. And now that I've taken the time to try to understand it more, I'm starting to map the area out so that I can bring back images more clearly and try to understand what it all means. Does it mean anything? I don't know. I mean, it's possible that it doesn't mean anything, but the visions when you close your eyes, when I close my eyes and have closed eye visions, those visions come through more intensely and more clearly than anything that I've ever seen in this life. So to me, it must mean something. The Ghost in the Machine. This is my project, my life project the journey that I'm on now, the journey that you will accompany me with and help me out with from time to time. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So I mentioned that I was able to source my medicine from a black owned business. And one of the things that I was able to get from them was a DMT vape pen. Now, I have done DMT many years ago. I had an incredible experience. I did not break through to the other side. It's something that I've always wanted to do. I want to break through and go talk to those machine elves. So I get my hands on this DMT pen, and I tried it 3 times. I did not break through. The visions that were delivered to me were visions of the machine shop and places that were most definitely here on Earth. I just wasn't expecting that at all from the trip reports that other people have given. I was expecting an electric carnival. I was expecting to see some jokers. I was expecting the loading screen and breaking through to the other side, but I was not expecting to go to the places that I went to. One place I'm pretty sure was in Big Sur or Big Basin. One place I'm pretty sure was in an apartment complex in LA. And a third place I'm pretty sure was in Florida. Again, these images are coming through so crystal clear that I can't ignore them. But, and I wasn't delivered any messages directly, but I'm inferring from this experience that I'm just not ready to go to that place yet. And I'm going to go ahead and focus on where I'm at now. And that's okay. But I just wanted to share that these are the two main substances that I'm working with now, the psilocybin mushrooms and the DMT. Um, Many others that I would love to try, but not in a hurry, not pursuing them. If they present themselves to me, I'll accept. So let's do a trip report now. This past weekend, I did a journey in the dark. Um, it was incredible. Uh, what can I say? It was incredible. So the I have what I call my best playlist ever. It's about 6 hours long, and of course, it's titled The Ghost in the Machine. It is an incredible collection of EDM type music with neoclassical, and it's a really good representation of where music is at today. The composers and the performers are just next level, and every time I listen to these songs, takes me to different dimensions, even without substances. But with them, it's a new song every time. I love it. So I put my headphones on, I put my blindfold on. Let's start the playlist. I was expecting to go to the machine shop, but I did not. Again, still working out the dosage here. I need a higher dosage in order to get to that space. But the first place I did go to, I'm calling it the Jungle Box because it felt like a jungle in India, maybe Nepal. I've never been there. I don't know my places, but I'm seeing this jungle in front of me. And then off to my left, it goes straight into what looks like the inside of a shipping container. So imagine lush foliage, lots of green, brown, and then this shipping container, which is like a rusty orange color. And in this shipping container are these rugs and fabrics that are very beautiful, very detailed, and they're animated and they're dancing around and they're coming towards me and they're like, it looked very aggressive. It had a very underground black market vibe. I don't know what it meant, but it was so intense and hyper realistic. I cannot get over how real it looks. Um, I'd love to go back just because it was just that mesmerizing to watch. I was unsettled, but um in sort of like an exhilarated way. It wasn't too scary. I mean, I've seen many more frightening things before that, but goodness, wow. It was incredible. I just wanted to share that. And I would like to share some themes that I got out of this trip. Okay. People, places, and things. So one of the things I notice about being on these medicines is again how clear the visions are coming in. Right now, if I imagine a tiger, I'll imagine it in my mind's eye, right? Or if I close my eyes and I imagine a tiger, I can kind of see it. Maybe like 30 to 50%, let's say that. You know, some people have, I think it's called aphantasia, where they cannot make pictures in their mind. I can make pictures in my mind, but they're not clear. I really have to focus in order to see a picture at even 50%. But when I'm in an altered state, I'm seeing it 100%. If I think of a person, I'm seeing that person in front of me. If I think of a place like my friend's house or a place that I was visited during my childhood, it's like I am in that place. Um, so what I'm trying to get out of this is to use both my meditation practice and my journaling to visit places that my mind is telling me to go. Um, Basically, to sort out memories that I have where there may be unfinished business or just things that need to be brought to my attention. Like I can go to those places in the medicine. Another thing that I was able to do that I had not done before is revisit my dreams. Now, for me, when I'm preparing for a deep dive, I usually have pretty vivid dreams the night before. This time, I was able to return to the dream space. I had a dream the night before that I was on sort of like a mountain coast and I was staying in a hotel on the mountainside. And then on an island like right next to the mountain, there's like a theme park. And the vibe is a festival vibe and it's a celebration, springtime, almost like a graduation. And hundreds of thousands of people are all here celebrating in festival gear. And in my dream, basically the at the end of my dream, I'm in the festival space and I'm trying to make my way back to the hotel and I get lost. And I pull out my phone and my phone is dying and I'm trying to navigate my way back, but my phone is definitely going to die before I figure out how to get back to my hotel. So what I wished would have happened was I would have realized I was dreaming in the moment. But what actually happened was I just woke up out of the dream once I realized I couldn't get back to where I wanted to go. I've been having a lot of dreams lately where I'm going through crowds of people. So this one is standing out to me as meaningful. I'm not sure what my psyche is trying to tell me, but when I was in an altered state, I went back to the landscape of the dream. I didn't go back to the dream itself and that sequence of events, but I was looking at the entire space from the top down. And I could change my view, I could change my location, and I could see everything that was going on from a bird's eye view. And it was incredible. Um, Again, something that I want to practice doing so that I can really explore in in a more intentional way, right? Coming up on these substances is overwhelming. The body load is high, and so it's often that this journey is sort of taking me rather than me taking it, and I'm trying to piece it together after the fact. And I'm getting to the point where I can focus well enough to have a little bit more control over what I'm doing and what's happening. Um, okay, so here's some other things that I experienced over the weekend or over my journey that I'm still processing and I'm still integrating. So I'm just putting them out here. Uh, the thing about journeying is that you will experience some out of this world things, uh, things that we might call woo woo. And it's every person's kind of experience to try to piece together like what is and what isn't. And I think generally speaking, um, as far as the scientific and medical community goes, they say that your visions are your own. You're not really seeing objective reality, you're seeing a subjective view of what you're seeing. So I'm kind of operating on that assumption a little bit. especially because I will have some wild experiences that directly contradict each other. Like they can't both be true. So I guess at the end of the day, I have to pick and choose what I believe to be real and what I don't. I do believe I am a spiritual person. I do believe in the supernatural, and that's not going to change. I would even say that because I believe in the supernatural, that is what enables a person to have these experiences. Um, in science, we say seeing is believing. And that may be true from a materialist sense, but I don't believe that's true in a spiritual sense. I think in a spiritual sense, you have to believe first, then you will be able to see what you can see. But what I do believe is that there is a shift happening in the collective, in society, on the planet, and in the collective human consciousness. There's a shift happening. And I even think that maybe there's a vibrational split that's occurring right now. And I was shown a lot of aspects of this while I was in an altered state. Now that I've had a few days to come down, um, integrating is one of the most important things that you do after a journey. Um, it's great to have a transformative experience. It's great to have all these messages that you're receiving of love and light, and you're getting all this information downloaded. But if you don't apply it to your daily life, then it kind of just all goes away. Or if you apply it in a weird way, uh, you can actually do damage to yourself. I think a good example is the Messiah complex. Many people are shown that they are God, and then they come back down with a solipsistic viewpoint, meaning that they believe that they are the only person that exists, and all the rest of us are like figments of their imagination. Um, I have been shown this, and it is uncomfortable. I do reject the notion that there's only, well, I'm on the fence, I guess I should say, about whether or not there's only one consciousness or not. I do believe that we all came from one consciousness, but are we all going to return to source? I think that remains to be seen. Um, for now, I stand on the belief that every single person has a divine spark in them and is completely autonomous, and I would treat everybody that way. Uh, I don't believe that I am the singular consciousness. I believe I'm a product of it, and that's where I'm at right now. But as far as integration goes, um, journaling is the way to go. I try to write as much down in my journal the day after. Um, I have also decided in the past month or so to level up my meditation practice. I'm practicing mindfulness meditation. I'm a beginner. I think I've gotten at basically the maximum benefit from mindful meditation practice, and I'm ready for a more focused meditation. Um, this trip that I had sort of confirmed that for me. So I'm kind of moving on a little bit with that. And the end game here, or my intention, is to better control my thoughts. I think step one was sort of acknowledging and analyzing the inner critic, right? And I'm able, at this point, after a couple of years of mindful meditation, my inner critic is gone and now on my side. I no longer criticize myself in my own mind. I no longer judge myself for the things that I want and the things that I do. I'm fully, uh, unapologetically and authentically living where I'm at in the moment. And so that part I have accomplished, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm really happy with myself for that. The next part is that, well, what do I do? Uh, more intentional thinking. My thoughts are going all the time, all the time, and they repeat themselves. So why not take that brain energy and put it into something positive intentionally and focus? And that's where I'm at now. So that's my trip report. That's where I'm at in my journey right now. Now I would like to move on to the topic of the day and of the month, which is International Women's Day. All right. So International Women's Day, March 8th, that was Saturday. And I would like to talk about what I learned this week. Okay. So here's some things that I learned. International Women's Day started in 1911. I also learned that people kind of forgot about it for a while until 1969 when some ladies did a march in Berkeley, California, and revived the practice. Then in 1978, a group in Sonoma County decided, hey, we should expand this to more than just one day. So then it was expanded to a week. And then in 1987, it was officially expanded into Women's Month. So we're going to do some reading, folks, real quick. Women's History Day. All right. Took this off the wiki page. In the United States, Women's History Month traces its beginnings back to the first International Women's Day in 1911. Laura X organized a march in Berkeley, California on International Women's Day in 1969. International Women's Day had largely been forgotten in the United States before then. The march led to the creation of the Women's History Research Center, a central archive of the women's movement from 1968 to 1974. Laura X also thought it unfair for half the human race to have only one day in a year and called for a National Women's History Month to be built around International Women's Day. The Women's History Research Center collected nearly 1 million documents on microfilm and provided resources and records of the women's liberation movement that are now available through the National Women's History Alliance, which carried on their ideas, including successfully petitioning Congress to declare March as Women's History Month. In 1978, the school district of Sonoma County, California, participated in Women's History Week, an event designed around the week of March 8th. In 1979, a 15-day conference about women's history was held at Sarah Lawrence College from July 13th to July 29th, chaired by historian Gerda Lerner. It was co-sponsored by Sarah Lawrence College, the Women's Action Alliance, and the Smithsonian Institution. When its participants learned about the success of the Sonoma County Women's History Week celebration, they decided to initiate similar celebrations within their own organizations, communities, and school districts. They also agreed to support an effort to secure a National Women's History Week. In 1987, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress passed Pub L 100 9, which designated the month of March 1987 as Women's History Month. Between 1988 and 1994, Congress passed additional resolutions requesting and authorizing the president to proclaim March of each year as Women's History Month. Since 1988, U.S. presidents have issued annual proclamations designating the month of March as Women's History Month on occasion. Can I just say, I love living in California. California is cool. Thank you, ladies of California, for leading the way on this. Now, so I often feel like I'm at square one. Okay, I've said before, I'm not an activist. Uh, I'm haven't read too many books. Don't know too many things. So the way that I am celebrating Women's History Month is by shifting my algorithm to include more women's voices, more black women's voices, and indigenous women too. All right. Um, I'm still doom scrolling. That's a thing that I do. I'm gonna keep doing it. Okay. But I'm gonna include more women's voices, hear what they have to say. These messages are in the process of percolating in my mind so that I can better understand how to be a better ally. Now, if you ask Ziggy, go up to Ziggy, say, Ziggy, you're a women's ally? Okay, well, name five women. I'd be like, uh, 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 uh. So I thought, let's try to name five women. Let's see if I can do that, right? So I scoured the interwebs and I've chosen a few names that stand out to me that speak to me, okay? That are meaningful in the place that I'm at right now. So let's go down this list. First off, we have Michaela Coel. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Michaela Coel. Okay. She's an actress from the UK. She uh she starred in a show called Chewing Gum, which I remember watching a few years ago. It was hilarious. It reminded me of the show Haters Back Off, but it was a lot better than that show. Um she really rocked it, and again, very quirky, very funny. Then right after that, I saw a show of hers called I May Destroy You, which was loosely based on her real life experience of being assaulted and having to process that in the aftermath. That was a rough watch. That was very challenging. The person that I was watching that with at the time could relate to the protagonist, having had been assaulted herself. And I imagine that her performance probably speaks to a lot of women who've been through something like that. And um, I thought it was a really good show, really great watch. I also saw her in an episode of Black Mirror that she was really good in as well. So haven't heard from her lately, but I hope she's doing well. Super cool, super talented. Yes. Okay, next up is Evan Rachel Wood. All right. Evan Rachel Wood was in the show Westworld. Now, when I was growing up, I've always been into dystopian type flicks. The original Westwood was one of my favorites. I have seen that movie dozens and dozens of times. So when I heard that there was going to be a show, I was floored. I thoroughly enjoyed the show, all the seasons, even though people don't really like the later ones. Um, Look, the reboot is heavy. It's dark, and there are many metaphors and references to the MK Ultra mind control projects. These synthetic humans are act as hosts in an amusement park where people go in and can basically live out and act however they want to. So the synthetic human hosts are the recipients of incredible amounts of violence, and every single day they get traumatized, and then at the end of the day their memories are wiped and they get put back into the system the next day. uh, Again, really heavy with the MK Ultra mind control program. Evan Rachel Wood's character Dolores seems to me like an amalgamation of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz and Alice from Alice in Wonderland. um, Two known MK templates. um, Again, eh, all shows like these I have mixed feelings on. I feel weird that I enjoy them as much as I do. The performances are spectacular. The visual effects, the writing, everything about it is fantastic. But they're talking about some real shit that's really going on in this world. So again, mixed feelings, but Evan Rachel Wood is incredible, and she gained notoriety for coming out against Marilyn Manson, who's her ex. She came out as him as an alleged abuser, and you know, it really shines a light on how much courage it takes to confront your abuser, especially in public. And it also is a great example that can give us who don't know insight as to why people don't come out after they've been abused. So she stands out to me. Next, I've got Laverne Cox. Okay, she's the first trans woman to be nominated for an award and to win an Emmy. I believe I saw her in Orange is the New Black. That was a real interesting show, and she's also a well-known activist. So you go Laverne Cox, lead the way and fight the good fight. Lena Waithe comes up for me. I actually don't know that much about her, but I know I saw her in a show. I saw her in Master of None, and I'm sure I saw her in a different show too. She's a queer woman, black, lesbian, presents as butch, um, a little more masculine, rather. So I admire her. Um, she's been in some other shows that I have not seen yet, but maybe someday I will. I think The Chai and I think Dear White People or something like that. Next up, I have Hunter Schafer. Okay. I remember Hunter Schafer from Euphoria. She's a trans woman who plays a trans character on the show. I watched about the first 3 episodes of Euphoria and I tapped out. Um, it's very provocative. I can see why it's so popular, but I just don't feel comfortable watching a show about like high school kids and like I'm in my 30s. It was just a little too much for me. I can handle a lot, but wasn't feeling it. But Zendaya and Hunter Schafer in particular, were I remember them performing very well. Now, the reason that I put her down now is because she just came up in my feed. Um, she was talking about the passport situation, and the administration is passing restrictions on trans people in their passports, and she was negatively impacted by it. Um, it reminded me of a high school friend I have, uh, a high school friend who I have not seen them or talked to them in like 15 plus years. However, I saw on social media that they were just able to get their passport and get all that stuff sorted out before the administration started clamping down on things. So I was really happy to hear that my friend was doing well. But uh, with the Hunter Schafer situation, I mean, this is just kind of ridiculous. I mean, look at her, and these people over here want to say that she needs to identify as a man. To me, it's just absurd. I get why these people think the way they do because I was raised in that culture, but to take it to this level, I don't even have the time right now to unravel all of this. It's just the discrimination against trans people is not okay. Uh, I don't know what to do about it other than to say this is ridiculous. Um, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 women, but they're all actresses mostly known for their performances. So I wanted to include some people that I know for sure are activists. Not that they're not activists, but you know what I mean. Um, Here's an interesting thing that happened to me. So I came up on this name, Winona LaDulce. I believe that's how you say that. She's an indigenous activist, and the name came up. And just a few days ago, I was on YouTube and the algorithm just autoplayed this video where Winona is speaking about the pipeline that was built and how the water protectors were protesting this pipeline and how the establishment went after them with the dogs and the hoses and all that stuff. Um, so it was just like a small little synchronicity that I'm putting her name down because I want to learn more about her. She's an indigenous activist. She really tells it like it is, which I appreciate. Um, I know that society expects activists and oppressed people to have some sense of decorum. I don't I believe that that notion is weaponized against people to not speak truth to power. So anybody who's telling it like it is, I would like to hear them more. Okay. Next up, Malala Yousafzai. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. This lady is from Pakistan, and she's been an activist for women's rights and equality since she was a teenager. And when she was 15, uh, people tried to assassinate her, and she survived. And she's been an activist ever since. I know that I recognized her face before, but I didn't know that much about her. She popped out at me as somebody who was like, she's gonna fight the good fight until the very end. And um, I would like to get to know her so that I can draw inspiration from her, so that when it's time to do what needs to be done, I can do so without any fear or without any hesitation. Thank you, Malala. Roxane Gay. Uh, she writes for the New York Times. She's a black woman who talks, she talks a lot about racism and body positivity. This lady has been coming up in my algorithm on Instagram, so I know of her. I just don't know that much about her, so she's on my list to get to know. Um, every time I've heard her speak, she's saying something that's some real food for thought. So I appreciate that. Roxane Gay, I'm going to get to know her more. And then last, but of course not least, Angela Davis, who's been an activist for longer, way longer than I've been alive. She was wrongly imprisoned in the 70s. She's an academic. Um, I'm going to do a deep dive more on this and what's going on, and specifically what she's talking about today. She's been relevant for that long. Of course, there are so many other women. Coretta Scott King comes to mind. Rosa Parks comes to mind. She's more of an activist in the civil rights space, but um, you know, I figure if I do a little bit every day, keep that spark of curiosity going, I'll learn. I'll learn a little bit every day. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I want to thank you all for your patience. All right. Next time somebody asks me to name 5 women, got them ready, locked and loaded, ready to go. Okay. Next, I want to talk about some podcasts that I've been listening to. Um, like I said, the medicine delivers itself in many different ways. And the messages that I've been getting through podcasts are some of those ways. So, the first one I want to talk about is the telepathy tapes. If you haven't heard, this podcast is experiencing a meteoric rise. This lady Kai Dickinson is investigating the concept of telepathy. Now, she started by talking to families that have people who are on the autism spectrum that are non-speakers, and the telepathic bonds that they formed with either their relatives or caregivers. Now, um, I personally have had the pleasure of working closely with people with different intellectual disabilities. They are some of my favorite people on earth. I used to work in a day program. I don't anymore, but it really was my favorite job. I mean, just to be around these people all day and to spread the joy and to have the joy coming to me. Uh, there's really nothing like it. Um, so I have mixed feelings when I went online to the forums to see what how people are talking about, people are really dragging this show. It's unfortunate, but basically the question is this. Um, so they're doing like faux experiments to verify whether or not telepathy is actually happening using using something called facilitated communication, which is where a caregiver helps a person who's non-speaking to be able to communicate using different methods. And this whole concept is already controversial in the space. I don't fully understand it. Um, I my viewpoint is uh, we should assume competence in everybody. If a person is non-speaking, we should assume they have something to say. We should assume that they have their own language and that we it's up to us to learn that language that they speak and help them to do that in whatever way works for them on their terms. But what people are saying, excuse me, is that um, what she is saying on the podcast is that they basically have verified that this is happening. And on their website, they have these tapes that you can view. I have not viewed them because they're behind a paywall. I just don't feel like paying for it. But people are saying that the tapes disappoint, that they're not actually showing um, that, you know, this is happening. You see a caregiver with hand on the hand or hand on the shoulder or whatever. And so you can't verify that this is happening. And then what other people are saying is that these poor parents and these people are being taken advantage of, that the parents will believe anything because they're so desperate. So they'll believe in a fairy tale that their kid is telepathic when it's all hocus pocus mumbo jumbo. And I get it. And ultimately, the question is um, can a person who is non speaking give consent to participate in an experiment or give consent to be put out there in such a public way? I don't know the answer to that question. I think a caregiver should be in tune enough with their person that they understand their language and it's something that can only be determined on a case by case basis. So I'm not in a place where I'm trying to actively promote this idea because for so many people it's cringe. Um, but I want to believe, for me, it's already a foregone conclusion that the spirit world is more real than this world. So things like telepathy, things like, I don't know, telekinesis or remote viewing or teleportation, whatever. I'm already on board with or without this podcast. Um, but here's what I took away. So the claim that she's making is that all non speakers are telepathic by default and can read thoughts. And that to me is a little bit heavy. Like, if anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, or where they are, whatever, if anybody can read my thoughts, sometimes in here it's so chaotic. Wow. Look at if you have ever read my thoughts, um, without having control over it, I'm sorry. I am working on it. Okay. I'm better than I was a year ago, and I'm better than I was 2, 3 years ago, but damn, like sometimes my shit is whack. So the other thing that she said though was that this specific group of people is the most pure and the most forgiving type of person. So when I think about like, oh man, somebody could be inside my head reading my thoughts. Oh no, I'm so sorry. But also to know that it's all love all the time. For some reason, this sort of unlocked a breakthrough in my mind that really motivates me to just be in control of my thoughts and just to not presume anything bad about anybody, but to always hope for the best in everybody and to always put love out. So that's part of the project that I'm working on is always putting love out. Okay. I'm past rumination, you know, why replay an argument in my head over and over and over again when I can just replay love, joy, and peace? It's easier said than done, but with practice, I think I'm getting the hang of it. So, and this podcast really helped me get that breakthrough. So I'm thankful for it. I know it's controversial, but I think if people in general had the intention of supporting any type of people group that's having a hard time supporting themselves, then the controversy won't be that big of a deal. That's my take on that. Okay. The next podcast I want to talk about is called Acid for Squares. Um, this is a podcast where this couple is interviewing people. There are many podcasts like this that's talking about psychedelics, that's talking about paranormal, but a particular episode uh, that I listened to had the guest Bashar, right? This guy's name is Daryl Anka, and disclaimer: we're about to go into some woo ness. Okay, now Daryl Anka claims that he channels an extraterrestrial from a parallel dimension that's roughly 500 years in the future compared to ours. This sounds insane. It sounds wild. I mean, right? It sounds kooky. I am not against the idea of channeling in general. Now, I'm coming from the evangelical church upbringing, so channeling is a dirty word to folks like those. I am not against channeling. I do have mixed feelings about it. Okay. Um, but I really wasn't, I really have had this guy, uh, I've had my eye on him for a while. Um, and I'm really skeptical. I've always been really skeptical of him, and I still am. However, the way that he explains things, I think, is really effective. And there is a lot of overlap in my worldview and the things that he's saying. Um, I think that I'm dealing with some trust issues that I will get into regarding the general space, not specifically with him. But as I'm listening to this podcast, I feel myself being a little bit more receptive to it. And then when I went on my journey with myself, I was shown uh, I basically basically was shown like a pathway from this timeline to the timeline that he was talking about. So I'm kind of like I'm still not totally sure, but he said something very astute, which was like you can look at it, on its face. You can look at it this way as channeling, or you can look at it as he's channeling like a reflection of himself or a part of his own psyche, and you can look at it that way. But everything that exists comes from and exists within the mind of the super intelligence, whatever you want to call that. And we are all essentially one, or at least we're all knit or woven together into a single energy field that's all happening at the same time. And being in that space, um, I saw it and I was shown it. So that's just the funny thing about integration is that when I'm in that space, like that is what's real and this is like a dream. And when I'm in this space, this is real and that is like a dream. So these are concepts that I'm working with and carrying, and I don't know where exactly I land. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. Uh, but I will say that my experience this weekend has moved the needle from being skeptical of Bashar and being like, you're a quack to not really feeling that way anymore. Um, I think maybe he does kind of know what he's talking about. I'm not saying that he definitely is channeling an extraterrestrial from another dimension. Um, the issues with that sort of thing is that when you believe in infinite timelines, you can make any prediction you want to, and it doesn't have to come true because you can just say like, "Hey, well, what I was seeing did happen in this other timeline. It just didn't happen in this one." And so that doesn't do much for me. However, I do I kind of like Bashar, and I kind of like listening to him and what he has to say because I think he's really insightful. So thank you, Daryl Anka, for your contribution to the collective. I appreciate you. And then the third podcast I want to talk about is called Hildy the Barback and the Lake of Fire. This is basically like a storybook. It's like an audio story dramatization of a medieval fantasy realm comedy starring Melissa McCarthy. She is incredible. You've also got these other folks, Ben Falcone and Steve Mallory. Look, so these people own a bar. Think It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but dragons and fairies and centaurs and elves. Okay. And she's got to go on a quest to save the Middle Earth from the Dark Lord. Okay. So, really, really basic plot, but the timing and it's so quick witted and it's so funny and it's honestly pretty crass. If you want to laugh today, go listen to Hildy the Barback. It's so funny. It's hilarious. So shout out to Melissa McCarthy. I hadn't she dropped off the face of my planet for a while, but now she's back, and I'm gonna look for other stuff that she's done because she's just really hilarious. Thank you. All right, folks, let's talk about the news. We're talking about the news. I'm trying to keep it positive this week because I wanted to I'm really doom and gloomy most of the time, and I want to talk about conspiracy theories and show off my tinfoil hat collection. And I got a lot of thoughts on feminism and how the establishment attacks it and oppresses it. I wanted to try to keep things positive, and I tried. Let's begin. Okay. The world's largest women's conference is fighting against gender backlash. So, a women's conference happened at the UN. All right, the UN News, the AP News, and BBC are reporting on this. Everybody's reporting on it, of course, but so basically, what's happening is in the past year or so, or few years, there's been a backlash against feminism. If you listen to dude podcasts, you probably know. What's his name? Zuckerberg was over on Joe Rogan talking about how the tech industry is too feminine and we need more masculinity, whatever that means. So I'm getting a sense that yeah, there is this pushback. Um, Again, I think it's ridiculous. Um, this is a tool. The backlash is a tool to divide the genders when we really should be turning our attention to the ruling class. We're not doing it well enough, but that is what's happening in the wake of International Women's Day. This was, I think, a couple of days ago that this meeting happened. So that's what's going on. Trans people being banned from the military. This came in my news feed. Trump is banning trans people from the military. I looked it up, and here's what I've got here. Okay. The military has about 1.3 active duty personnel, according to Department of Defense data. While transgender rights advocates say there are as many as 15,000 transgender service members, officials say the number is in the low thousands. A poll from Gallup published on Monday said 58% of Americans favored allowing openly transgender individuals serving in the military, but that support had dropped from 71% in 2019. Okay, so what I'm hearing from this is that the majority of people surveyed still support allowing trans folks in the military. It was a lot higher, and now the even though the support is still in the majority, it's declining. So I expect to see it continue to decline, honestly. Um, but then I read something from the National Library of Medicine that says in 2019, the Department of Defense issued a policy stipulating that, with limited exception, transgender individuals are ineligible for accession and retention in the US military unless they serve in their biological sex. So I'm a little bit confused into what that means. It sounds to me like trans individuals were being banned since 2019. Um, Maybe what they're saying is that they still could serve if they just signed up under their assigned gender. I'm not sure what this means. My personal opinion is that I don't really understand why trans folks would want to join the military at all. As a black man, I'm not interested in sacrificing my life for an establishment that does not give one single fuck about me. And I don't see why trans folks would want to do that either. But that's their journey. I don't really need to understand many things to know that, an attack on one group's autonomy, an attack on one person's value as a person is bad for everybody. Um, Next up, Trump's trade war with Canada. So the trade war seems to be escalating. Um, Trump's talking about declaring a national emergency because Canada, it may not be supplying electricity that it was supplying to certain parts of the country before. Um, this escalation is clearly a game. Trump has mentioned again Canada becoming the 51st state. Okay. So I think the writing's on the wall. Uh, Sooner or later, Trump is going to blitzkrieg Canada and Greenland. And then he's talking about the Panama Canal. Well, there's a whole lot of land between the southern border and the Panama Canal. So I don't see why he wouldn't just rush through Mexico and Central America and just go all the way down. Um, yeah, bad times ahead. What I'm going to put here as a side note is that in the culture that I'm from, American evangelicalism, that is obsessed with end time prophecy, uh, they would say that the dirty lefty communists are going to divide the world into 10 nations and that the North American continent will become a super country and that this is something we need to watch out for. And now Trump is talking about doing that very same thing. Um, Alarm bells should be going off right now for everybody, but especially people in church. This is a topic that I'm going to have a lot of fun getting into in a couple weeks when I've got my notes down. So stay tuned for that. All right. Um, my news feed is also saying that Trump is intentionally crashing the market, and specifically that this market crash would happen at the end of March. That's like 2 weeks away, folks. So again, I don't know. I am not an economist. I don't know about any of this stuff. I just listened to Robert Kiyosaki talking about how poor people are removed from the truth, and that's why they're poor. Well, I don't know the truth because I'm poor as shit, bro. I am broke. So I've never traded a stock before in my life. So if the economy crashes, I'll probably be in the same place that I was before. I've got a lot of nothing, and I still kept most of it so far. But we'll see what happens. All right. Well, this isn't really news, but my algorithm has brought my attention to a lady named Whitney Webb. So, in the interest of International Women's Day and of month, I would like to give a shout out to this lady, Whitney Webb. Uh, I'm not exactly sure which one. I subscribe to a bunch of channels and I'm not sure which one's exactly hers, but I'm seeing her a lot. She is an investigative reporter that talks a lot about the tech industry, the role that technology plays in the fascist movement. She talks a lot about AI and what she thinks is going to happen in the future. And let me tell you, everything that I've been thinking and trying to tell people, she is talking about. So I want to try to direct people to her because she actually knows like the inner workings of the system and can explain very well. She talks about companies like Palantir and Praxis, which are new to my attention. I'm going to do some more research and see what that's about. But um, talks about a whole lot. I'm listening to her. Don't know much about her, but she explains things very well. So I encourage people to look her up, see what you think. Okay. Last thing that I want to leave you with. So I binged watched a show last weekend, and I have not binged watched anything for years, but this show came up on Hulu called Deli Boys, and it was hilarious as it was harrowing. Um, these two brothers who are Pakistani, their father owns a chain of bodegas, right? And the father dies in what appears to be a freak accident. But they find out after his death, after the FBI raids their offices and their homes and takes everything from them, they find out that their father was the head of an underground criminal organization running cocaine and distributing it throughout the city. And now they are in over their heads. They have no idea what they're doing. And this show was it was incredible. I mean, I really had a fun time watching it. It was so funny, and the performances were so good that I watched the first episode, and then the next night I watched all the other episodes, and I haven't done that in so long. Uh, so if you want to get a kick out of something, you should watch this show. It's really good. Just putting it out there. All right, folks, that's my time. Thank you for coming in today to see me. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time.
Space between my body and my I don't need anything when I'm here. Because it feels like home.